to I'm the audience member.
Hello, my name is Dana Depew. I'll be talking about Coueism today. So what is Coueism? It is a method of self-help that was developed in the first half of the 20th century by French psychologist Emile Coué. His system of psychotherapy concentrated and stressed autosuggestion. And what is autosuggestion, you may ask? It is the repetition of ideas and suggestions to influence one's own thoughts, feelings, behaviors for the better. To basically adopt a more positive attitude by just repeating like little self-help mantras, which are very, very common on posts on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, posts like believe in yourself, you got this. One of my favorites, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So that ties directly into Coueism, that last one. And in order to better understand Coueism, maybe you need more of a New Age recent example, which ties into my next topic. Oprah Winfrey. She talks a lot about manifestation, which is essentially having an idea that you focus in on your thoughts to portray in real life. So they're talking about manifesting a happy life, essentially. The CEO is talking of LinkedIn talks about how he talks with people who are 5-10 years into their careers and are still unhappy. And he essentially says that you must take the time to really understand what it is that you want. And as soon as you have that moment of clarity, you can begin to manifest it explicitly and implicitly throughout your life. You'll start having these goals that you will start working towards too. And that's essentially what it is. Having that idea in your mind, and it's through the power of thinking that you can manifest it into reality. She said, Oprah, that you have a lot of control of your own thoughts, and you must be careful what you think. If you don't think you can do it, if you don't think if you're good enough for your career or good enough for your classes, if you don't think you can, you certainly probably can't. So this is Emile Coué's book, Self-Mastery, the Conscious Autosuggestion. And in his first chapter, he talks about the concept of will versus imagination, willpower. He says that will that we claim so proudly, that the control we have over ourselves, will always yield to imagination. If, like I said, that goes back to if we don't think we can, we probably can't. He illustrates an example of people walking on a long wooden plank, 30 feet long, 1 foot wide. And you lay it on the ground and have people walk, and they can stop foot over foot and not fall off. But if you raise that wooden plank all the way up to the towers of a cathedral and have those same people, just average Joe Schmoes off the street, try to walk that plank, they could take a couple steps and back away quickly because they don't think that they can. But construction workers do it all the time. It's because they believe that they can, so they can do it. And that's exactly what Coué is trying to stress. If you imagine you cannot, it is absolutely impossible for you to do so. And that's a direct quotation from this book of his. This is, by the way, free online. You can look it up and read it. So there's a lot of historians that talk about Coué, one specifically, Dean R. Rupp. This is coming from an article by the Daily JSTOR. It talks about how he began to develop his ideas before he even wrote this book. He worked at a free clinic in France and essentially used a non-hypnotic suggestion that patients used on themselves through the power of their own minds, through a slogan that he developed. Essentially, every day I'm getting better. Every day in every way I'm getting better and better. And it worked for a lot of people. There was studies that his case studies on these patients that they were actually able to help cure mental and even physical ailments. This historian, though, Dean R. Rapp, he did have his criticisms, though, as a couple other people, a couple other, you know, historians and critics, philosophers of his time and recent times, will critique his ideas, because Coueism, so, oh my god, I'm sorry. Historian Dean R. Rapp, the one from Daily JSTOR, essentially said that he didn't denigrate the conscious self and reason, but he did dismiss its role. The conscious self being, okay, we're going to move on to the next card. Okay, so another opposing viewpoint of Coueism was John Dewey. He was an American philosopher of the first half of the 20th century, just as Coué was. He wanted people to not look at Coueism as a cure, because cures do not touch the cause, but only the effects. Essentially, he didn't want people to say this mantra 20 times a night and expect it to cure their mental illness, to, you know, they shouldn't have such great expectations, he was essentially saying. It shouldn't be a cure-all, end-all. But I don't believe that was necessarily what Coué was trying to stress through this technique. John Dewey said that if this cure does touch on the actual cause, it is something more than just a cure. It is a re-education, it is restoration of an organism which manifests symptoms of health because it is rightly constructed.